Gazing at the pale light filtering through the rain-streaked window, Katherine Wilson let out a long, weary sigh. The hum of fluorescent bulbs and the quiet tapping of keyboards filled the cramped translation office, but her mind felt far away. Sitting at her desk in the modest corner of a small translation company, she scrolled line by line through another Spanish legal contract, converting it into flawless English. This was her daily rhythm, methodical, precise, and endlessly repetitive. Sometimes, as she rubbed her tired eyes and stared at the blinking cursor, she couldn't help but feel disappointed. Her life had become a steady current with no surprises, a monotonous routine she both relied on and resented. "Have you finished translating the Gutierrez contract?" The familiar voice of her boss, Mike, broke her train of thought. His tone carried more habit than impatience, but Katherine immediately straightened up. "I'm almost done," she replied quickly, forcing a small smile. "I'll definitely submit it today." "Good." Mike gave her a brief nod before moving on to another employee's desk, already lost in his own concerns. Katherine exhaled, turned back to the screen, and let her fingers race across the keyboard. In this office, her talent was recognized. Her ability to read, speak, and write Spanish as fluently as her mother tongue made her indispensable. She had worked hard for this respect, but the cruel irony was that the people she longed to impress the most, her family, considered her achievements meaningless. The Wilson family name was heavy with expectations. Her father, George Wilson, was not only a respected heart surgeon but practically a legend in the local medical community. Her mother, Martha, had been a sharp and eloquent lawyer before retiring, known for her quick wit and relentless ambition, and her older sister, Victoria, had followed neatly in George's footsteps, building a brilliant career in medicine. They were the shining figures of a long lineage of doctors, lawyers, and businesspeople. And then there was Katherine, the odd one out, the linguist, the translator. She could still remember the looks on their faces the day she declared her college major, linguistics, she had said proudly, her voice shaking slightly with both nerves and excitement. Her mother's lips had tightened. To use your intelligence for something like that? Her father hadn't even looked up from his papers. You should have gone to medical school. At least then you'd contribute something meaningful. And Victoria, her ever-perfect sister, had offered her helpful advice with a smile that felt more like a blade. If you insist on languages, at least aim higher. AUN interpreter. Maybe, not just translating documents. That was the beginning of her quiet exile. The years that followed were not easy. Katherine freelanced from coffee shops and tiny apartments, sometimes barely making rent. She picked up small projects no one else wanted, translating menus, instruction manuals, even tourist brochures. It was a slow climb, but she eventually carved out stability at her current company. She was proud of the life she had built with her own effort. Still, pride was not enough to silence the lingering guilt that she had not become the daughter her parents had wanted. Her relationship with her family remained polite but hollow. She was invited to Christmas dinners, but her words rarely carried weight at the table. On birthdays, she received the kind of perfunctory messages that felt more obligatory than affectionate. Conversations were about surgeries, court cases, and prestigious conferences, never about translations, never about her. Only when the family traveled abroad did she suddenly become useful. "Katherine, can you read this menu? Translate this sign for us. What does the guidebook say about this place?" For those brief moments, she was temporarily valuable. Once home, she faded back into the shadows of irrelevance. That evening, after finishing her work and returning to her modest apartment, Katherine sank into the quiet comfort of her couch. She had just begun to unwind when her phone buzzed. Glancing at the screen, her heart gave a small jolt. It was her mother. It had been so long since Martha last called that Katherine almost wondered if it was a mistake. "I'm glad I reached you." Her mother's voice came through, unusually cheerful. "I have wonderful news. Your father, Victoria, and I have decided to travel to Spain next month." Katherine blinked, caught off guard. A simple travel announcement could have been sent in a text. Why the phone call? "And," Martha continued smoothly, "we thought you might like to come with us." For a moment, Katherine could not respond. She hadn't traveled with her family since childhood. The idea felt surreal. "You'd be a great help." "Of course," her mother added, almost as an afterthought. Your Spanish would make everything so much easier. We're planning 2 weeks, mostly in Barcelona. A strange, flickering hope rose in Catherine's chest. Could this be more than convenience? Could this be a chance, however small, to bridge the years of distance? To finally be seen not just as the odd one out, but as their daughter and sister again? I'll go, she said softly, surprising herself with how quickly the words escaped. Thank you, Mom. After the call ended, Katherine set the phone down and sat in silence, staring at the rain still tracing patterns on her window. Her emotions tangled: hope, doubt, longing, and suspicion. Did they truly want her company, or simply her skills? Yet, for the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe in possibility. Perhaps this trip could shift something. Perhaps Barcelona would be more than just a destination. Perhaps it could be the beginning of warmth returning to a family that had been cold to her for far too long. Documents. Oh, this is the worst, the woman exclaimed in Spanish, her hands flying to stop the dark coffee spreading across the table. The papers beneath her already bore large brown stains, the ink beginning to blur. Katherine Wilson instinctively jumped to her feet. Grabbing a handful of napkins from her own table, she hurried over and pressed them gently against the growing puddle. Let me help, she said in fluent Spanish, dabbing quickly before the damage grew worse. She moved with calm precision, absorbing most of the spill before it could seep further. The woman blinked up at her, startled. Thank you, your Spanish is very good. Katherine smiled faintly. I've been an interpreter for over 10 years. When the crisis was over and the worst of the papers saved, the woman sighed with relief and extended her hand. Elena Rodriguez, she introduced herself, her tone carrying both gratitude and a trace of lingering worry. I own a small travel company here in the city, Barcelona Adventures. Katherine shook her hand. Katherine Wilson, I'm just visiting. Elena's expression clouded. I'm in a terrible situation. My guide, who was supposed to lead a group of English-speaking tourists this afternoon, suddenly fell ill. They're scheduled to leave in less than 2 hours, and I... She trailed off, pressing her hand to her forehead. I don't know what to do. The words slipped out before Katherine had time to think. I could help, if you'd like. Elena's eyes lit up. Really? Are you familiar with Barcelona? Katherine hesitated but answered honestly. Actually, it's my first time. But I've prepared basic tourist information for my family. I know enough history, I have no problem switching between Spanish and English, and I love culture. I think I could manage. Elena studied her for a long moment, weighing her sincerity. Finally, she nodded, determination flashing in her eyes. Then, would you like to try guiding today's tour? It's an emergency. I'll pay you, of course. A jolt of excitement rushed through Katherine. She had no time to doubt herself. Yes, I'll do it. She glanced down at her outfit, jeans, sneakers, and a plain blouse. But, in these clothes? Elena chuckled. Don't worry, come to my office. We have uniforms. There's still time for me to explain the route. As they walked through the bustling streets, Katherine's thoughts threatened to drift back to the heavy leather bag slung over her shoulder, the one that contained her family's passports and all of their travel money. Her father's voice still echoed in her head, the sharp words he had flung at her that morning before leaving her behind at the hotel. She shook the thought away. Not now. Focus on this chance. Elena's office was tucked away on a narrow street lined with bakeries and souvenir shops. Inside, the space was small but vibrant, walls decorated with vivid photographs of Barcelona's landmarks, shelves stacked with guidebooks and colorful maps. It smelled faintly of coffee and old paper. Elena handed her a neatly folded blue polo shirt and matching cap. Our standard uniform. It will help the tourists recognize you. Katherine slipped into the bathroom to change. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she almost didn't recognize the woman staring back. She no longer looked like a forgotten daughter or the family's pack mule, she looked like someone with authority, someone who belonged. When she returned, Elena spread a large map across the desk. Today's tour is focused on the Gothic Quarter and the Picasso Museum. There are 12 participants, all English speakers. We'll start at Placa Real, wind through the Gothic Quarter, then finish at the museum. Here's the script our guides usually follow. At the museum, you'll need to highlight a few key works. This guidebook has summaries. Katherine pulled a notebook from her bag and scribbled quickly, absorbing every detail. Anxiety flickered in her stomach, but so did excitement. Elena hesitated, her voice dropping. One more thing? I usually pay in cash, but the bank closes soon, and I may not be able to withdraw it today. Could you wait until tomorrow morning? Katherine instinctively thought of her father's bag, heavy with euros. She felt a sharp pang of guilt, but it passed quickly. I'll manage. I can cover myself tonight if I need to. That's fine, she said firmly. More importantly, I don't have anywhere to stay. Elena's brow furrowed. Did something happen? Katherine hesitated, then explained, carefully, the situation. Being abandoned by her family, left without a hotel. She kept the details vague, but it was enough. Elena's eyes softened. That must have been awful. Don't worry, I know a small hotel nearby. Clean, safe, and reasonably priced. I'll call them and reserve a room for you. Relief washed over Katherine. Thank you, Elena. Really. That afternoon, Katherine found herself standing in front of 12 expectant tourists from America, Canada, and England. Their cameras dangled around their necks, their guidebooks clutched tightly. She cleared her throat, nerves prickling at the back of her neck. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Barcelona. Her voice trembled at first, but as she continued, her confidence grew. She led them through the narrow alleys of the Gothic quarter, pointing out the medieval stone walls, the hidden courtyards, the stories etched into the city's architecture. By the time they reached the Picasso Museum, Katherine's nerves had transformed into exhilaration. She spoke passionately about the young Picasso's sketches, the evolution of his style, the political weight of Guernica. She watched the tourists' eyes widen, their smiles grow. How long have you been working in Barcelona? An American man asked, impressed. Katherine laughed softly, choosing honesty. Actually, today is my first day. But I'm happy to share this city's charm with you. Her frankness only seemed to endear her to them. At the end of the tour, the group applauded warmly. A few even slipped folded bills into her hand, thanking her for making the city come alive. Back at the office, Elena clasped her shoulders with both hands. You were incredible. The tourists loved you. You really have talent. Katherine blushed, overwhelmed. For the first time in her life, her language skills had been more than a convenience, they had been celebrated. Just hours earlier she had been dismissed and left behind by her family. Now she stood here, valued, capable, needed. Elena's eyes sparkled. We have tours every day this week. Would you consider leading them all? Our regular guide won't be well anytime soon. Yes, Katherine said without hesitation, her voice steady. I'd be honored. That night, she checked into the small hotel Elena had arranged. The room was simple but cozy, with a narrow balcony overlooking a quiet street. She used a little of her father's money to buy toiletries and a change of clothes, then collapsed onto the bed. Her body was exhausted, but her mind raced. That morning, she had been carrying her family's bags, ignored and belittled. By evening, she had stepped into a new identity: guide, leader, storyteller. She stared at the ceiling and let out a long, quiet laugh. Such is the irony of life. As for the bag, the passports, the thick stack of euros, the power it represented, she would think about that tomorrow. Tonight, she simply wanted to sleep, filled with the first flickers of possibility.